Great to be here on this Wednesday. Kevin Thomas, Ben Troop, BJ Bennett. Glad you were with us all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. So much to get to. Bobby Lamb will join us. We'll talk college football with him, formerly of Furman, then at Mercer, now at Anderson University in South Carolina, starting a program there for the D2 school. So we'll get to that. Gaurav Vidak will join us in the final hour. We'll talk Braves coming out of the All-Star break. What are the potential moves that could be made and more? But we come out of the All-Star game last night, and outside of the hideous uniforms that they decide to strap on this thing, I don't know why we can't just wear, like the Braves and Nationals and White Sox uniforms, but that's neither here nor there. Get off my lawn. Now we get to the real work, BJ and Ben, of where are you at and where does this team go over the last 2.5 months? Got a D for a first half grade. ESPN Plus said, hey, you get about a D. What say you guys?
I mean, it's been disappointing. I think that's probably fair when you look at where the expectations were and kind of what you thought this team might be, defending champ 3 years running. And early on, you had some struggles, a couple of 4-game losing streaks in the opening few weeks. And this is a team that has lacked consistency, right? When you think about being able to get to 500, get over 500, you still have not been over 500 yet once this entire season. And as you look ahead, it's going to be a really, really difficult start to the second half. I believe, want to double check it here. Yeah, you have the Rays, you have the Padres, then you have 9 straight in a row on the road at Philly and at the Mets. You have 4 in Philly and 5 in New York with a doubleheader one day. So you're not quite to that point where you've had a winning record. You obviously have a limited roster, and you're going to open up the second half with the Rays, Padres, and then at Philly and at the Mets. So I know a lot of people have looked ahead and said, okay, can the Braves add a bat? Can they add a starting pitcher? Could they do something with the bullpen by the trade deadline? I think what we see against Tampa and San Diego, Kevin, might kind of determine how willing the administration of the Braves is to make a move. I mean, if you come out and you lose a couple of series to start the second half, obviously no Acuna, I don't know that there's going to be great motivation to go out and try to give away the prospects that it's going to take to get significantly better at the major league level. So very disappointing first half. I think you have a lot of pressure on you and a very difficult schedule to start the second half. And I think what we see in those first couple of series might determine what the Braves do here at the end of the month.
Oh, we lost Ben there for a second. But look, if I'm the Braves, I think this is coming out, BJ, a big evaluator. You've got the Padres. You got the Tampa Bay Rays first, and then the Padres. I think you kind of see where you're at. I know they were talking to Ozzie Albies during the All-Star game last night of, hey, how are you guys looking to go down the stretch? And he's like, look, we're going to try to go out, be there for our team, and play hard and win games. I mean, I get that. You're 4 games out, BJ. You come out and play well, you're right there in it. My question is, with the roster as it looks right now, is that a roster that can play up for 2.5 months, even if you go out and add a Joey Gallo?
I mean, Acuna just means so much to this team. You're talking about one of the 3 or 4 best players in baseball. But beyond just that, Kevin, you're talking about a guy that sets the tone, sets the table as the leadoff hitter. I mean, what he's done at that position in the lineup, being first, has had a ripple effect throughout the entire lineup. And I think, you look at the RBI numbers for Ozzie and Freddie and Austin Riley, Ronald Acuna is the catalyst. And I think not having him there just changes everything so significantly. And we're getting a comment on Facebook from Virgil saying sell. That may be the reality. I think if Atlanta loses the series to Tampa, loses the series to San Diego, and you see the Mets start off well, maybe you're looking at it in the second half here at the end of the month saying, look, we're potentially 6-7 games out. That's going to be near impossible to overcome with our limited roster. We're going to trade a Charlie Morton. We're going to trade a Luke Jackson. And keep in mind, I'm just throwing these names out. I have no idea if there's any viability there. But I think for as much as we've conditioned ourselves to think that the Braves are going to be buyers at the trade deadline, I think there's a chance, an outside chance, and obviously none of us are rooting for this, but an outside chance that they end up trying to sell some of their more veteran assets or trade some of their more veteran assets to try to get young talent in the minor league system. And to me, Kevin, I think the most valuable player on your roster that you would consider trading would be Charlie Morton. You're talking about a free agent at the end of the year. I believe he's 37. He's been red hot. He's been really, really productive the last couple of weeks. If you're out of it and if you feel like you're going to go with the youth movement, maybe you trade Charlie Morton and you get a couple of prospects that can help kind of restock the minor league system. So I think there's a chance to what Virgil's talking about with sell. There's nowhere near enough pitching. We're still waiting on Huascar Ynoa. You don't know quite what's going on there. Of course, big picture, Mike Soroka, unknowns. So I think these first couple of series are going to be very important for the Braves.
I think Charlie Morton's only on a 1-year deal, so you may not be able to get that much for Charlie Morton because he's done, unless you're giving him to a contender who's like, we're willing to pay that price to get 2.5 months to kind of kick us over the top. I think the question I look at, BJ, is this, is not even to the sell to Virgil's take there is, are you hold on this team? i.e., when it's healthy, where do you think this team is? Now, I'm not saying if you think the Marcell Ozuna situation is not going to resolve itself in a wonderful way, and it very well may not, and he's not coming back at any point, which a lot of people think he's not, then yeah, Joey Gallo makes a lot of sense for not only the rest of this year, but moving forward. But outside of that, take a 10-foot step back and say, okay, Joey Gallo is my left fielder. Pache or Drew Waters, do we feel like they've developed enough to be my center fielder? And Acuna should be back at some point early next season. That's pretty good. You look at the infield. Maybe you don't like Dansby. You could figure that out. But Austin Riley, Ozzie Albies, Freddie Freeman, I think you feel pretty good about that. Catching, you have a hole because Darno, that's on the last year of his deal. How do you feel about Contreras' continued maturation in the minors? I'm guessing that's where he's going to be the rest of the year, so we can get a lot of catching time. And/or Shea Langoliers, is he becoming more major league ready? So if you step back, look at that, and say Mike Soroka coming back, maybe a more settled starting rotation with what I just mentioned, without really doing anything but one move. Do you feel like that team is a contending baseball team?
With that roster, I think I would still have questions about the starting pitching because, well,
that's fair enough.
Here's why, Kev. Here's why.
If you think it is, though, then you don't make a move. In my opinion, you just hold, wait till guys get healthy, maybe pick up Gallo, and wait till 2022.
Well, I think when you look at the starting pitching moving forward, you say you get Mike Soroka back healthy. That's obviously the hope. We're all wishing Mike the best, but I don't know that. I don't know that the expectation is that Mike is back at the start of this next season. If he is, he's going to be a guy that hasn't played at a professional level in a couple of years and has had some pretty significant physical adversity to overcome. So for me, it's hard to kind of project forward and say, I know for a fact we're going to get this out of Mike Soroka. You look at the rest of the potential pitching rotation. I mean, Max Fried, if we're being honest, has probably been a disappointment this season. You have an ERA in the mid to high 4s. I don't know right this second that you feel that Max Fried is a number one guy right now. I mean, potentially, he's obviously been really, really good throughout his career. But then when you move forward, like you said, Charlie Morton is 37 years old. He's on a 1-year deal. So as currently constituted, Charlie Morton is not a part of the team next year. You look at Huascar Ynoa, had a fantastic start, but had an injury. We haven't seen him back yet. I know that there's great expectations, and understandably so, for Kyle Muller, but you're talking about a guy that's made 5 or 6 starts. So I think right now when you project forward, I think it's really hard to look at Atlanta's projected rotation with so many uncertainties. Washington Nationals, the Philadelphia Phillies, or even the Miami Marlins at this point, I think there's a lot of questions about the rotation.
Yeah, I know a lot of people keep talking about Dansby. Virgil way back in and says Dansby's good, but someone will give him $200 million. I don't know anybody who's given Dansby $200 million. I mean, even on a 10-year deal, that's $20 million. And offensively, he can hit you some home runs, but he's very inconsistent. I don't see him having to cost quite that much. I think he's okay defensively. I think he's pretty good defensively, actually, but I don't see somebody paying. I mean, with all due respect, Virgil, you said Lindor got 300. I'm not even uttering Dansby and Lindor in the same breath at this point. I mean, so I don't think he gets anywhere close to $200 million. Do you, BJ? I don't think anybody's going to offer Dansby $200 million when it comes time to pay up.
No, and I mean this season has not been great. I haven't checked it today. Obviously, the last couple of days, I should say, but I think the batting average has been between 230 and 240, maybe in the high 220s. So yeah, clearly a good player who's having a down year, but I don't think right now his value is to the point where he would command that type of contract on the open market. That would surprise me.
Yeah, I mean, look, I look at this team, BJ. My kind of view is you look at the first couple of series coming out, you're still working on deals. I think you still go out for Gallo because I think that's one that potentially makes sense. A home run hitter to replace what everybody kind of feels isn't going to happen with Marcell Ozuna, right? I mean, a lot of people just think, look, if he comes back to Major League Baseball, it probably won't be with the Atlanta Braves. Like that just seems to be, at the very least, the prevailing sentiment. So I think that move makes sense. However, am I just sell for what? If I think again, I'm going to have the makings of a very solid baseball team with what I have, if they get there. So again, another answer, another question. Ben Anderson, you can buy and sell at the same time, dealing Smiley and Smith to try to add two outfielders. And again, this is what we talk about. Like, I know Kimbrel would love to come back to Atlanta, Ben, but again, Drew Smiley and I'm assuming Will Smith, who have been about as inconsistent as humanly possible, are going to get you two everyday outfielders and a guy like Craig Kimbrel. I don't see it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, because I've heard a lot of people say, hey, trade Dansby Swanson. Well, I don't think guys like Drew Smiley and Dansby Swanson, given the seasons they've had, have high trade value right now. I mean, Will Smith, he's had some great years at the major league level, but and I know he's closed out a lot of games, but it's been a little iffy at times. I don't know that he's going to command. Yeah, I don't know that he's going to command a high return. So I think it's going to be tough. I think it's a tough line to walk. It's going to be difficult to try to make moves to get better. And like I said earlier in the week, not compromise some of your top prospects in terms of, getting rid of guys who are big macro long-term pieces in terms of the projections. That worries me a little bit. I do think potentially you can do some things, but I think the Braves are in an interesting spot. And Kevin, like you said, is there a chance for all the buy-sell stuff? You don't buy, you don't sell, you just kind of do nothing and wait it out. I think there's a chance that happens.
Again, I'm not usually an advocate for just sit there. And I think, again, there's a move to be made that makes you better down the road. I just think for this team, you have so many holes to fill to make it competitive that it's going to be tough to fill them all just in a trade deadline cycle. We've got more to come here. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We're talking college football. The rest of this hour, who's got the toughest opening stretch right out of the gate as well? Bobby Lamb will join us in about 20 minutes. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to be back here, 3 and Out. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. We have Ben here with us on the show, and a lot to get to. BJ and Ben will look at who's got the toughest out of the gate stretch here in college football. But BJ, wanted to answer a question we had from a listener there during the break, talking about a trade. Just to speculate, what would a package of Contreras, Dansby, and Pache bring back for Atlanta?
Yeah, I think you could get a quality major league player for that. I do. You're talking about a package. Again, Dansby Swanson, while he hasn't had a banner season, you're talking about a guy that's a former number 1 overall pick that's been a good major league player. And then Contreras and Pache are two of the top, I guess, I don't know how you want to phrase it, if you want to say they played in the majors, but top prospects that you have in your organization. I think you could get a quality major league player in return. Now, the question would be, do you want to give up a former number 1 overall pick and two of your top field players, position players that are what, 21, 22, 23, Dansby maybe a couple of years older than that? Do you think, Kevin, I think you could get a good player for that, but three of your top field players and position players, including an outfielder that you've been talking about for what, 2-3 years, that would be a lot to give up potentially.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to, again, you're selling the promise of Contreras and Pache. Contreras looks like he's going to be a great major league catcher at some point. It may not be now. Pache, we know, can play defense, but he has shown can't really hit at the major league level right now. So you're going to sell a team on, hey, if you can teach this guy how to hit better, he plays great defense. So that's part of it. And I know that package deal. So you're talking about giving up 3 guys for maybe 1 or 2 guys coming back in return. I think that's a tough sell for me as an organization to give up that much, because again, now I'm weaker at shortstop in the short term in terms of defense. And I've given up 2 top prospects. And right now, if it ain't Shea Langoliers, William Contreras is probably your best young option at catcher in the not too distant future. So you're going to have to fill that hole potentially in another move. So to me, you could do that. I still don't think it fills enough holes to move forward. We'll get to more of that coming up. Gaurav Vidoc will join us in the final hour of the program. But fellas, college football, a little bit more than a month away, just over a month and a half away from the season getting started. Which teams, though? We've talked a lot about Georgia, Clemson, and Miami and Alabama coming out of the gate strong, but who's got the toughest right out of the gate 4 or 5 game stretches in college football where it's the first month, their season could be defined right then and there?
For me, BJ, I think I kind of know who you're going with, but I think it's going to be Tennessee. Bigger than the fact that, they got some big games coming up towards like the 4th and the 5th game of the year. You're going through an entire rebuild. Everybody that was of any importance on your team, head coach, and athletic director, everything's new. And, you're saying, well, being Bowling Green seems like a very winnable game for Tennessee. Well, what is a winnable game now for Tennessee? This is the same Tennessee team at full strength 2 years ago. Georgia State comes in first game of the year and beats them. Then they got Pitt. BJ, you always telling me the one thing you can guarantee with Pitt is a nasty defense. Who's going to be able to move the ball against them? Tennessee Tech. All right. In most years, Kevin, I would say Tennessee Tech, you can that's a wash. Well, Tennessee Tech is looking forward to playing Tennessee. We'll see what happens. Then you got Florida and Missouri. I think there's going to be a huge stretch. As one, every team is going to be counting healthy bodies after the 5th game. 2, you don't know who you're going to be running out there for Tennessee. You got different schemes on offense and defense. You got a total different team that you're going to run out. For me, it's going to be the Tennessee Vols. One, because you talk about the rebuild. Everything's new. Everybody of significance is on other teams. And to another team's depth. Bowling Green, they want to throw the football. Pitt's going to bring a defense. Tennessee Tech don't know a lot about them. But Florida, Missouri are familiar foes. So you could be staring at a 1-4, maybe a 0-5 record, depending on what goes on in the first game, because it's all about the buy-in. And if after the first game, this team isn't showing any level of promise, you could be looking at a potential 0-5 going into week 6.
Yeah, that would be there would be a lot of frustrated people with Tennessee football if they were to start out 0-5. But yeah, some big games there. I think I look at 3 teams that I circled. I think in our state, Georgia State, they opened the season with Army at North Carolina, Charlotte at Auburn, and App State. So you're talking about some really difficult games, and you kick off Sunbelt play with App State. I look at Miami. The Hurricanes, of course, have Alabama in Atlanta, but then they have App State right after that, Michigan State, Central Connecticut State, and they start conference play against Virginia. But your first 3 games, if you're Miami, Alabama, Appalachian State, Michigan State, that is very difficult for the Hurricanes. And then out of the SEC, take a look at Arkansas, and of course Georgia Southern's on that early schedule. But for Arkansas, you have Rice, then you have the rivalry with Texas, Georgia Southern, Texas A&M, and at Georgia for Arkansas in their first 5 games. So I look at Georgia State out of the Sun Belt, Miami out of the ACC, Arkansas out of the SEC as having one of those tough, just 5-game stretches to open the year.
Now, BJ, I know a team that, no surprise. I know it's talking about the first 5 games. Miami opens up with Alabama. De'Aaron King is coming off an ACL injury. Their season could be over, not because they don't got healthy bodies, but the main common denominator, and for their whole season could be out. I go back, what was it? What they call it, the greatest opener of all time, not too many years ago, BJ, Florida State versus who? Alabama. DeAndre Francois tears his ACL, and dare I say they haven't been able to recover as a team since that happened. So I'm just saying De'Aaron King is looking to do some great things. Most colleges, the hopes and the dreams of every college and university rest on the arm and the health, and this time an ACL, of a guy like De'Aaron King. But Kevin, I don't care who you got first 5 games. If your first game is Alabama, that's like playing 5 games. You are playing the best team in the country. So while if you are, last year we were talking to Clinton, or 2 years ago talking to Clinton Portis when they played my Gators first game of the year. I don't think Clinton. I'm looking at my phone, and my phone number ain't changed. He ain't making no bets around time, this year. But yeah, I just do think that Miami, if they're gonna have any level of success, bigger than just trying to win that first game, you got to make sure De'Aaron King stays healthy.
Well, yeah, King's health is going to be, critically important. But the thing about Miami is not only do they open up with Alabama, but that's going to be a major test, and that's something you focus on all offseason. But then after that Alabama game, Kevin, you got to get right away because you have Appalachian State and Michigan State the next 2 weeks. So that's a really challenging start for the U. Yeah,
and look, everybody is waiting for them to be back. And you said it a number of times, BJ, they may never get there. I think you just want to start with winning an ACC championship. Can we just start there, right? Before we have them beating Alabama and Michigan State and the U is back, can they win an ACC championship? That hasn't happened. What, in the 15 plus years they've been in the league, they've only been to the game 1 time? Is my math wrong? 1 time? I think they were scheduled to go a second time, but pulled themselves out due to violations and sanctions against themselves. But in their whole time in the ACC, they've been to the championship game 1 time. When they came in, they were one of the baddest dudes in college football, and they've only been 1 time. I think before we start saying, hey, Alabama or Miami's ready to do this and that, and they have great players, which they do, let's navigate the ACC Coastal first. Let's get to an ACC championship game and win it before I'm ready to say the U is ready to be a top 10 mainstay anytime soon.
Kevin coming with listen. You want to crown him? Go ahead and crown him. But no. But I think you bring up a good point. Different teams are chasing different legacies, right? Like the U is trying to chase the legacy of the U. Like a Florida State is trying to chase the legacy of Florida State while trying to get back into the national conversation. I think you make a good point, Kevin. Miami did it with, I don't want to say I like their 30 for 30s. It was a bunch of them because they did it with a lot of different coaches, not just one coach. But I think now, what always scares me is if you didn't grow up wanting to play for a team, you just good enough to play for a team. And De'Aaron King did not grow up wanting to play for the U. But when you look at the transfer portal, he was one of the top guys. And here it is, Manny Diaz. He no longer on yachts and messing up Florida State football camps. He got to win some games. We'll see what happens, but it just scares me because Alabama has the greatest recruiting class in their history. I thought they already did that. But I guess they're going to do it again. They got another Devonta Smith. My goodness, got a dude named Bryce Young. So, yeah, I'm always wishing I'm always hoping for the best as far as, health for all these players. But, BJ, just like I know, a front row seat, Alabama is going to be rough.
Again, we'll see who can come out of the gate firing with some tough opening schedules, maybe set the tone for the remainder of their season. But we'll come back. Always enjoy talking to our next guest, Bobby Lamb, former head coach at Furman, former head coach at Mercer, now starting up the program at Anderson University in South Carolina. He will join us next here on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.
3 and Out.
Great to be here with you on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, glad you're with us. College football right around the corner, and our next guest has been a part of some great programs, building programs. Furman, bringing back the Mercer program. Now he's going to do it again with Anderson University, D2 in South Carolina. Bobby Lamb, I was just named the head coach there. He joins us here on 3 and Out. Coach, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
Hey, we're doing fantastic. Speak to that, because you brought back Mercer football, and now you're bringing in a new program. What is it about kind of building from scratch, apparently, that excites you about this part of the game?
Well, most people think I'm crazy, including my wife, but I tell you, I really enjoy the building part of it, the process you got to go through to get to that first game. You got your thumbprint on everything from picking out the kind of carpets in the building, to picking out the lockers, to scheduling games, to picking out equipment. So you got a lot of work to do between now and then. And I just feel that I really enjoy that. And I enjoy the football part of it as well, but I enjoy the building and the process you have to go through to get there.
Coach, how much of what you experienced at Mercer, bringing that program back after 70 years, will help you now with Anderson?
I think I got this job because of that. I have the blueprint to do that, and I don't know. Researchers will show that I'm probably the only guy in America that's ever started a program from scratch, and we'll see. But I'm able to. What I'm going to be able to do is I'm able to take the things that we did well at Mercer and continue them here, and then the things that we didn't do so well, we can correct. It's like building a house. If you build a house and you don't like the square footage of it, or you don't like the size of this room, the next time you build a house, you're going to make it bigger. So we're going to try to do that here at Anderson.
And Coach, I mean, as you mentioned, I mean, being able to do this at another school, and being here at a different one now, you being a coach, you obviously know X's and O's. You know what it takes to go out there and get it done. But I mean, most coaches, wouldn't want to be picking out, what color the locker's going to be. Where does that come from? I know you coming from a great coaching background with your dad, but to know that you want to really say, look, I'm going to talk about the square footage. I'm going to talk about the things that really do the things that most coaches probably never done, but you seem to love it and seem to be excelling at it.
Yeah, it's just something I enjoy. I've always enjoyed being a part of just building something. And when we were at Furman, we had a really good situation, and football was established there. Then I went to Mercer, and it was just totally new. I enjoy seeing the sense of excitement within the community. And I can tell you, yesterday we had our press conference here at Anderson, and there was so many people there that I was overwhelmed. And then not only does football help your university, but it helps the entire area. I think we did that in Macon. We really brought football and Macon together there, Mercer and Macon together. It's going to happen here in Anderson. Football does, it creates excitement on weekends in the fall. When you don't have football, nobody's on campus, everybody goes home. So it instills school spirit, enhances your school spirit. It connects your alumni, certainly connects your alumni a lot better, because alumni can come back. And it also helps all your other sports, because all your other sports now have things to do in the fall when the recruits are on campus. So you really work hand in hand with the university and everybody else.
What is it about the building process? Because, Coach, not everybody likes to do that, man. It's like you come in and take a new job, and hey, there's existing players, and hey, we know what we can work with, and we'll add a few pieces. You got to start all the way over with 85 new guys who don't know anything about the way you want to do things, who don't have any kind of semblance of the way things are done there. What about that is exciting to you? Because for a lot of guys, I think that would be a turnoff when you're like, I literally have to do everything there's nothing existing. I build this roster the way I want it from player 1 to player 85.
Well, we're going to go all the way to 125 here. So we're going to have 125 on the roster at some point in time. But I think coaching football is about building relationships. That's one of the things I enjoy. I'm a people person. I like to get out. And I like to build relationships. I think the things that we did off the field at Mercer was fantastic. I think we did a great job of influencing our young men that we were trying to coach and mentor. And that's one of the things I'm going to do here is I'm going to be able to touch lives of 125 guys as they come rotating through our program. And that's what it's all about. And, I know we get caught up with the wins and losses, and that is ultimately the most important thing that you do. But when you're building a program, people give you time until you take your time and you get to enjoy the fruits of the labor, so to say.
And Coach, I believe you guys will start conference play in 2024, a very competitive conference. But how do you build to that point? What's first, second, third, fourth on the schedule for you as you start to kind of put your vision in place?
Okay, well, I'm actually starting almost a year head start of what we did at Mercer, and so about 3/4 of the year. So what we're going to do is I'm going to take this first 6 months. It's going to be me, myself, and I. And I'm going to go out and build relationships on the campus, build relationships within the community. Obviously, the number one goal is to go out and continue to raise money for this program. But I think I'll take time to do that. I'll make myself visible on Friday nights here in the upstate of South Carolina, watching high school football, start the recruiting process. I'll hire part of my staff in January. That staff will go out and we'll recruit our first class. Our first class is actually going to be 223, so we're starting the recruiting cycle there a year before, and then we'll hire the rest of our staff in January of 223, and our first class will be signed in February of 223. Those guys will come in. Now, here's where the tricky part is. The thing you don't like is I've got to go through 2 practice years, and practice years aren't a whole lot of fun. You're just practicing football and not getting to play, but you got to be real creative. I've got a good plan for that. So our first class will practice the fall of 23. We'll sign another class the fall of February of 24, and then 23 class, 24 class will come together in preseason camp in August of 24, and we'll play our first game September 7th of 24. If you can follow all that, good luck.
Now, Coach, listen. So the athletic director, obviously, he had to tell you these things. So they telling you, look, you're gonna have 2 practice classes. They're not gonna play till then. I mean, did he? And when he said it to you, and you said, all right, let's do it. I mean, was he shocked? Because when you mention, it's one thing to be able to start it from scratch, but you got to tell a bunch of young men, listen, you come to Anderson University, you're going to get a great, obviously you're going to get a great, career as far as like academics, athletics, but we're not going to play anybody for a couple of years. I mean, they had to sell you first, and you got to sell them. I mean, Coach, I know you're a great football coach, but did you sell any cars back in the day?
Well, once we get to that cycle, it's going to be the same as it was in Mercer. So really 23 will be the only practice year. 24 will come in, they'll start and really go play ball. But here's the deal with the 23 class. Your selling point is this, hey, come in here and create your own legacy. If you sign with us in 2023, you're going to be the first one in line at your position. And guess what? The line ain't very long because there ain't nobody behind you. And so you get an opportunity to be your redshirt year will be your practice year, and then you will have 4 more years to start college football and have a great college experience. And that's what we're doing. Ultimately, that's what we're trying to do, create a college experience for these young men, both on and off the field, that they can enjoy, hopefully win championships along the way and to graduate with a great degree. So I think we got a good plan going forward, but it is a challenge, but with the 23 class having to practice, but like I said, there's a lot of creativity that goes into that.
And Coach, how much? I mean, when I'm hearing you speak, I hear you sound like more than a football coach. How important is it for you to make sure these players know that, listen, football is going to be a tremendous part of your life, but you talk about being able to be seen at these football games, being able to be seen in the community. How much is that going to be one of your visions for these players to let them know that, look, you're not just in this community for people to cheer for. You got to be a part of this community as well.
Well, that's absolutely true. And that's one of the things I think we did a great job of Mercer is we got out into the community. I had so many people patting me on the back, not for winning 10 games that first year, but for simply bringing the football to Macon and creating excitement during the fall. And I think what you got to do here in these small cities is you got to go out and be a part of the community, because everybody loves to watch football. You got your helmet on. Nobody really knows what you look like. Okay. So get out in the community. You have community service. You work diligently with these folks in the community, and they're going to come watch you play and see you play. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, hopefully they hire you one day.
Bobby Lamb joining us here on 3 and Out. Before we let you go, Coach, wanted to just give you a moment to speak about coaching in your family, just your genes, your dad, you, your son, I understand, is now in coaching. Was it about being a Lamb that makes you want to stand on them sidelines?
Well, it all started with my dad. He's 85 years old now, had a tremendous career, just got elected into the Georgia Sports Hall of Fame about a month ago or 2 months ago. And so it all started with him. He's retired. Obviously, my brother, Hal, had a tremendous career at Calhoun, Georgia. He's now retired as well. And then my son is the offensive coordinator at Gardner-Webb, had a great career at Appalachian State. My nephew, Trey Lamb, Hal's son, is the head coach at Gardner-Webb. My brother-in-law is the offensive coordinator at Rabun County, and he's kind of coaching a guy named the quarterback up there that is committed to Georgia. I just fumbled his name, but I think you guys know who I'm talking about at Rabun County.
Stockton.
And then all that being said, my sister was a high school tennis coach as well. So there's coaching in our blood, so to say.
Certainly, wow, certainly runs deep, Coach. Really appreciate the time. Congratulations on the new gig there. I know you're excited about the building process, and thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
We'll do. Bobby Lamb joining us here, new head football coach at Anderson University, as he said there in the upstate of South Carolina. Going to get started in a couple of seasons, ready to play, BJ. But if you are a Lamb, you probably are going to be coaching at some point.
Yeah, great perspective and exciting opportunity when you talk about starting a program from scratch, Division II, and you're going to have competitive conference schedule in a couple of years, but did something very similar at Mercer, where Mercer had not had football for over 70 years, I believe. So happy for Coach and excited to see what he can do.
Talking about being the first, Kevin and BJ. I mean, Coach, as you mentioned, if your last name is Lamb and you're from the state of Georgia, if you're not coaching, I mean, I don't think that's allowed. But I mean, I can hear the passion in his voice. I think he's going to do a great job. And like he said, I mean, a head coach being at football games, just being in the community is not something you see. But I'm looking forward. I mean, obviously we're going to be tracking his success, man. I mean, those young men got a great guy leading them.
Absolutely, we've got more to come here. 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Great to be here with you on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Fellas, they have the list of attendees of SEC Media Days next week in Hoover out for the SEC. I know we've spent a lot of time talking about, who's going to lead some of these teams, and we'll get to this coming up later in the show where we give our kind of top 10 quarterbacks in the Southern Pigskin area. But the ACC is sending 14 quarterbacks to the ACC kickoff. How many SEC quarterbacks are showing up in Hoover? Care to take a guess? Not everybody at once. Seven for Ben?
Three or four.
I need one.
Four.
Incorrect. It's 3. JT Daniels, Bo Nix, and Matt Corral. That's it. Are you surprised by that in the SEC where, quarterback's kind of the face of your team? We're only seeing 3 out of the 14 teams send a quarterback. Now, I know they pared it down to just 2 players a team, but only 3 quarterbacks in the entire league showing up there in Hoover.
Well, I mean, great players all over the field, superstar All-American players at every position. But if you're JT Daniels and Jordan Davis, I believe, going for Georgia, the hype is there. Get ready to be asked about national titles and the college football playoff. And if you don't make it, is the season a bust? And do you have to beat Clemson? I mean, the storylines for Georgia are going to be – I mean, this is as much hype as I remember Georgia having in the preseason. So those guys are going to be front and center in a couple of weeks.
Just don't go Larry Fedora. Talk about the national championship, huh? What? Gotta have a good response when they start asking about all this.
I mean, JT Daniels is. I think they're taking him because he got to get welcome to what is really going on. I think that with what happened in 2020, he think that's how it is at Georgia, and then like Kirby's like, no, that's not how it is. You came in against Mississippi State and had about as good as a debut as everybody's going to see. But Kevin, BJ, y'all, we all know that he going, I'm just trying to show you how crazy it's going to be. I'm showing you how each game is almost like, okay, they beat them, and what about them? But that opener is going to be serious. Jordan Davis is obviously BJ a headline, a guy who definitely was, if you're a dog fan, love the fact that he decided to not go to the draft and come back. He's going to be obviously the anchor of a defensive line with guys like Nolan Smith. But yeah, JT Daniels is going to be the guy. Matt Corral, no surprise with there. Him and Lane Kiffin. But yeah, I'm always surprised that the ACC brings all the quarterbacks in the court, and you got to threaten these SEC coaches to even bring them at all.
Yeah, don't bring your star players. Come on. Why would we want to talk to them? We got more to come. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We take 3 next. Good to have you along 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Kevin, BJ, and Ben, hour number 2 here on the show. We'll look at the ACC Coastal. It's always wild and crazy on that side of the conference. Also, just coming out of the All-Star break, what does the Atlanta Braves Ultimate All-Star team look like? We'll give you some of our thoughts on that as well. But first, let's take 3 here on 3 and Out. All right, fellas. Take one. What is the biggest thing that we are not paying attention to with name, image, likeness?
I think it might be the possibility for trades, and what I mean by that is getting gear or getting something that's not money, right? Like all of the deals and contracts we've talked about have been how much money could you get, and certainly that's a big deal, and you've seen some massive deals already, and that's awesome to see. But I think there's also a chance to get a considerable amount of return with apparel or who knows what. I think the possibilities could be endless with trading commercials or marketing opportunities for something that a company makes or has. I think the possibility for trades in that regard are pretty limitless.
Ooh, what man? I mean, BJ, I like what you said about trades, but what scares me the most about it is it's the unknown. Like, we as grown men, there are things about money that we're still trying to figure out right now, and we have, mortgages to pay, children to raise, taxes, and we're still learning. Could you imagine? 17 to 24 years old, I get to make money off my name and image. All I hear is I get to make money. Well, what people don't understand about money is sometimes, to gain something, you have to take something away. What am I saying? There are people in college who you get Pell Grant. I got Pell Grant when I was in college. If you are getting money, getting paid, you are then eligible to get a benefit from the school, that being Pell Grant. That's one thing that could be taken away. And anytime money is exchanging hands, evil is lurking. I'm not saying that, you got, some of the worst people in the world out here trying to help these people, but they know it's something. My agent came to me and said, Ben, the only reason why I am here is because you're going to be a top draft pick. He was honest with me. And he said straight up, you don't make enough money for me to steal from you. You don't make enough. I'm like, well, thanks, I guess. But he was being honest. How many of these young men are going to be young ladies are going to be represented by people who have their best interests in mind? That's what's scary. It's not that you're going to benefit. You don't know how you could be potentially being taken advantage of. Trades, BJ, I think is great, but financial literacy is what scares me. And not one player, not named Master P's son, don't know nothing about no financial literacy. So that's what scares me, is not how much money you're generating, how much money is actually coming to you. Not how much money it looked in the headline, how much did you get? And what is that fine print for you to maintain it once you get it? I think it's going to be the language, it's going to be financial literacy, and it's going to be the fact that grown people are now representing even much younger people for the sake of everybody hopefully coming out, with a smile, and that's probably not going to end up that.
Yeah, I think that's the key part there, Ben, is how much are you supposedly getting and how much are you actually getting when it's all said and done, after maybe several people have had their hands involved in some of those situations. Moving along, take 2. Who are the top 3 wide receivers in the National Football League right now?
All right. Yeah, this is tough. I think I'm going to go DeAndre Hopkins 1. I think his consistency, the big catches, just amazing, absolutely amazing. Devontae Adams for me 2, and he gets overlooked sometimes, it feels like, when you talk about the top wide receivers in the league. And I'm still going to say Julio 3. I think there is an element of the unknown going to Tennessee and changing teams. And I know he's a little bit older, but still, when he's on, he's unstoppable. And we're not that far removed from record-breaking seasons. So for me, I will go right now DeAndre Hopkins 1, Devontae Adams 2, Julio Jones 3.
I had to, BJ, I mean, I say one thing before the show, then I go through and look at these stats, and I say something different. DeAndre Hopkins, about as good as it. DeAndre Hopkins is good because he was good when he didn't have Kyler Murray, when he didn't have Deshaun Watson. He was still an incredible talent. It's not because who's throwing to him, it's that they get to throw to him. Stephon Diggs, I would go number 2 because once again, everybody thought he was a one-trick pony when he was out there in Minnesota because he was getting all the catches. Could he go out there and be a lead dog, with Buffalo? 1 year in Buffalo, first team All-Pro. But number 3 for me, I'm sorry. I love you, Julio, and I don't take – and I love you now. You're over there with them Titans. I'm just saying. I'm going to go with Tyreek Hill because the thing about Tyreek is bigger than what he does when he got the ball in his hand. He scares defenses to death. You don't know what he's going to do, and he's a guy that obviously can do a lot with the ball in his hand. I go back to All Pros. I think he's been in the league about 6-7 years. 3 first-team All-Pros, 5-time Pro Bowler. That's got to mean something. And quick and fast, not just quick and not fast, but fast and not quick, very, very shifty. So, DeAndre, Nuke, he's obviously number 1. Stephon Diggs, first-team All-Pro, got to mean something. A route-running fool. That dude can go out there and get it done. Shout out to the Maryland Terps. I know he's one that you're always shouting him out. And Tyreek Hill for me, because when you talk about can take the top off, intermediate route running, can catch it in space, can catch, can go out there and make people miss, give me Tyreek Hill for 3.
All right, I asked you that because the ESPN did theirs, and they have Adams, Hopkins, and Diggs as their top 3. Obviously, some of you are very close to that, but obviously, BJ, you had Julio there. They did not in their top 3. I think that was kind of the argument when the Falcons, are you going to trade Julio? You're not going to trade Julio. Is he still in that top elite category at wide receiver? Obviously, you have him there. Some others don't.
Yeah, I think he still is. And again, there is an element of the unknown, changing teams, and, he's getting a little bit older, but I still think Julio Jones can go out there and do it. He's such a matchup problem. I don't know how you defend him. I think he's going to have a big year.
And I do feel bad about not putting Devontae Adams in there. He is another great surprise, another great receiver coming out of Green Bay. But I just think for me, Stephon Diggs guy follows since he came to the league. Tyreek Hill, regardless of who's throwing to him, even though it is P. Mahomes, is going to be nice. DeAndre Hopkins, man. My goodness, just put it up to him. DeAndre Hopkins ain't even fast. He ain't even the quickest. But you put it in his general vicinity, it's his every time.
All right, and finally, take 3, the most important question of the day. Today is National Mac and Cheese Day. What are the biggest no-nos when someone makes mac and cheese?
Don't overthink it, okay? I've been very surprised throughout my life to see that, sometimes people put toppings on macaroni and cheese. And by toppings, I'm not talking about cheese, okay? I'm talking about like breadcrumbs or some kind of vegetable or bacon bits or whatever people put on there. No. Why are you messing with it? No, Kevin. No. If you have macaroni and cheese, here's what goes into your macaroni and cheese. Are you ready? Macaroni and cheese. That's what goes in, and you don't mess with it. And people people overthink it. You're talking about, Kevin, I've seen people put like celery on there, like chopped up. People are doing all kind of unique things. And look, if you want to have that at your house, that's fine. Good for you. But you start talking about having people over, or if you're at a restaurant, just keep it simple with the macaroni and cheese. A lot of cheese. Ben, it's got to be hot. It needs to be really hot, gooey. But let's not go crazy with some of these toppings. No toppings at all, just cheese.
The very first thing you need to know what macaroni and cheese is, it needs to be recognizable. I need to look at it and go, hey, that's mac and cheese, not what is that? Because let me tell you something. Okay, think about this. I don't need nobody to say, oh, man, you don't know what that is? What? Oh, man, you never had? I don't like – mac and cheese is mac and cheese. Now, if it's not recognizable, I'm not eating it. I'm not trying it. I'm not gonna be the guinea pig. It's not gonna be, no, man, it's an old family recipe. Am I in your family? I'm not eating it. I want mac and cheese to be a universal thing. That at the very top, you got that top layer. Now I'm a top layer guy. I'm gonna take all the top layers off, and it should be gooey on the inside. I'm gonna say this too. Now, I saw our own Christian Gokel go out there and show him cheese sauce, and it came out good. Let me tell you something about that cheese sauce. You don't know what the hell you're doing, because if you don't and you mess it up, it's your own fault. I'm just telling you. Now, Christians look like it came out really, really good. He was very, very brave to put it on. That goes around Thanksgiving or something. But for those of you who don't know what you're doing, the cheese should be shredded, a lot of it, a lot of noodles, and macaroni noodles. These people are like, hey, man, we're going to use no. Don't give me all these different kind of noodles either. There are certain things in life you leave it alone, and mac and cheese is one of them. Kevin was like, wait a minute, sometimes you might want to have a crunchy topping. Well, go out there and get you a pie, okay? I don't want no crunchy topping. I don't want nothing crunching when it comes to my mac and cheese.
Not even on that little top layer of melted cheese. Sometimes, little Parmesan crumbles, the little, I'm telling you.
All I'm saying is, when you listen, if you mess up macaroni and cheese, it should be a fine for that. You shouldn't have to go to jail, but you should have to pay a fine because that's ridiculous. Like BJ say, don't mess this up. I should recognize it. And unless it's Kevin, we don't want no crunchy time. Hey, man, just put a little bit of, listen, put anything on the, no, leave my mac and cheese alone. That's universal.
And it's National Mac and Cheese Day. Very happy Christian chose that one as opposed to National Nude Day, which is also today. So Christian said he was going to go home and mac and cheese with no clothes on in celebration of both holidays. I'm just passing that along. That's what he said. If you eat mac and cheese naked, you may have a problem. That's all I'm going to say. Let's take 3. We'll move on. We'll come back, I guess. We'll let BJ recover from that. We're talking the All-Star break. Braves coming out of it. Who are the all-time Braves All-Star team? We'll break that down next. It's 3 and Out. We're coming out of the All-Star break. Obviously, a lot of Braves fans looking at the second half. What are the Braves going to do in the next 2 weeks or so before the trade deadline? They'll start back on Friday, opening up with the Rays and then the Padres. So a tough out of the chute there for a Braves team that is obviously walking wounded a little bit at a lot of key spots coming out of that All-Star break. But what about an All-Star team of just Atlanta Braves? So we want to put one of those together. Just Atlanta Braves. So if the history in Atlanta, not quite long enough. I know Warren Spahn, a little bit of a dip with the Braves. Nope, not enough. Probably not going to be there. Some of those guys that were, more Milwaukee, less Atlanta. So that being said, All-Star lineup only Atlanta Braves. What would it look like?
Well, it starts with the legend. I mean, Hank Aaron. I think obviously that's where you start. The GOAT, Hank Aaron, and the outfield guys is pretty amazing. I know you have some incredible options to choose from, but you talk about one of the best to ever do it, if not the best ever. Obviously, of course, the late Hank Aaron, Andrew Jones, Ronald Acuna. Would you guys disagree with that at all?
I mean, I don't. This is probably going to be the easiest one, BJ. Not the easiest, but you got so many guys to choose from. You're not going to go without Hammer and Hank. Andrew Jones, I mean, I'm just saying, like, this dude is about as good as you can be, as you mentioned, as a center fielder. Dale Murphy is a two-time, MVP. Ronald Acuna, I'm just saying. Kevin, I mean, you want to be the tiebreaker out here in right field? Dale, Ronald, I mean, you get to pick them.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it and thought about this long and hard because BJ and I kind of briefly talked about this off air. Hank Aaron, no problem. Andrew Jones, no problem. Then you get to that last spot and you're going, I mean, Dale Murphy was a 2-time MVP. He carried this team in the 80s when they were bad. Then on the other hand, you have a guy who literally might be one of the top 3 or 4 players in the game right now. You look at some of the numbers, one of the fastest to 100 home runs out there. In Major League Baseball, and you start looking at some of that stuff and you say, okay, maybe the longevity isn't there, but dude, that guy is doing things that you don't see a lot of guys do. He is that special of a player. So based on that, I was going to talk myself out of it because of a longevity issue, but based on that, I have Acuna as my third outfielder. I think Dave Justice would be in the discussion, but in my estimation, a good player, very good player with Atlanta, probably responsible for your World Series that you do have because he hit the home run that got you the World Series. But I think Dale Murphy a little bit better. Dale Murphy probably, in my book, Hall of Famer. I don't know that Dave Justice is. Dale Murphy, Hall of Famer. And again, I think Ronald Acuna, barring a just hugely negative setback, is on a numbers trajectory to Cooperstown. I mean, it is just unbelievable what he's done. So I lean that and put Ronald Acuna in there over Dale Murphy, which folks who know me might think might be a little bit of sacrilege, but there you go.
No, that's amazing. I mean, and yeah, you have multiple guys that are worthy. So we go Hammer and Hank, Andrew Jones, Ronald Acuna in the outfield. All right, Kevin, you started off with the infield here.
All right, this is very interesting because, again, some of it should be relatively easy. Some of it just kind of points out, well, they haven't really had a long history of great players at some of those positions. So I'll go first to third. Actually, I'll start catcher and we'll do the pitchers last. So catcher behind the plate, this was tough. I think you could look BMAC, who meant a lot, was a hometown guy, but I think just in terms of impact, all-star ability, I put Javi Lopez down as my guy. First base, Freddie Freeman.
Right, hold up, because I went McCann. So Ben, you were nodding. Did you have Javi for the tiebreaker?
I did have Javi. I mean, once again, growing up, Javi was the guy that was, I mean, when you got Javi Lopez was, a fan favorite, as you're talking about, Kevin, all-star, a caliber type player. So yeah, I went with Javi Lopez. Yes.
So yeah, Javi Lopez to me is the guy. It's close, but he's the guy. First base, Freddie Freeman. And to me, you go, man, that's you know how I hate doing that, BJ? Not because Freddie Freeman's not worthy, but I so fight against the recency bias when it comes to that. But you go back and start looking at the history of first base with the Atlanta Braves, and you're talking like Rico Brogna, Mark Teixeira for a year. You had Andres Galarraga for a little bit. Fred McGriff was there for a little bit. I really thought about Fred McGriff there, but
Yeah, McGriff had a great career now, but not Freddie Freeman.
He also had a great career with the Padres before he came to the Braves, so I take some of that into account. But I think Freddie Freeman is a guy that has held down that bag for probably longer than just about anybody in the last 25 or 30 years in Atlanta, and he's been a consistent all-star caliber and also is on a numbers trajectory where if he can keep it up, he's going to be right on the edge of that discussion of Hall of Famer or maybe just Hall of the extremely very good. Like he is going to be right there. So I put him at first base. And again, they just didn't have a long history of guys at first base that I thought it was much too much to talk about. Second base, and again, my mental brain only goes back so far with guys I've seen, but I put Mark Lemke there. I thought he was instrumental in some of those early Braves runs, was all-star caliber player. Outside of that, I mean, Marcus Giles, I guess. Ozzie Albies, I think, could get there. But for now, I go Mark Lemke.
I went Ozzie Albies at second, and I know he's currently on the team, and you almost feel like you're sort of disrespecting history, but I think Ozzie Albies, multiple-time All-Star, great power, a part of, one of the key playmakers for a team that made it to within a game of the World Series. I think Ozzie Albies would be my pick. Is my pick.
Yeah, I went with Ozzie as well, and I went with Ozzie, with everything you just mentioned, BJ, and even getting back to Freddie Freeman, real similar to Dale Murphy. Freddie Freeman was the only thing even worth talking about. I mean, 5-6 years ago when the Braves team was bad, Freddie Freeman was still as good as he is now back then. So, I go back to what you were saying, Kevin, about not a lot of great players at the first base position, but I do go Ozzie Albies at second.
Shortstop, again, have you had good shortstops? Yes. Have you had all-timers at shortstop? Yeah, I don't know. I kind of settled on Andrelton Simmons. I think Rafael Furcal was in that mix. I think I would leave Dansby out. I think he's better than people give him credit for, but I would take Andrelton Simmons over him. I think Rafael Furcal very much in that mix. I think Yunel Escobar was okay, but I ended up going with Andrelton Simmons kind of in that recency bias. I think Andrelton a better all-around than a guy like was it Jeff Blauser was back in the early 90s. So Andres Thomas, certainly better. So yeah, Andrelton Simmons was the ultimate pick there for me.
I went with this is Ben. I went with Rafael Furcal. I just think what he meant at the top of the order, incredible defensively. And yes, Andrelton Simmons is as good as it gets defensively. I agree with you there, and I have no problem if he's the shortstop. But I think about Rafael Furcal and just the rocket arm, right? Just amazing, defensively in his own right as well. And I think he was a little better offensively than Andrelton Simmons, a multiple-time All-Star. So, Ben, I don't know if you get the tiebreaker here, but I went Rafael Furcal.
I believe Ben might be frozen on us here a little bit. How
do we get the tiebreaker if he's frozen?
I don't know. Ben, are you
my bad, man. Yeah, I am back. Listen. I'm not going to go either one. I do like my grandfather's son was looking down saying, if you go against Jeff Blouse, it's going to be you and me, young man. One of my grandfather's, favorite players. So I will go with Blouse. I will let Kevin be the tiebreaker today.
No, there was no tiebreaker. We all went three different guys. There at shortstop. I don't think we went wrong, but I like Andrelton there just a little bit more. Third base, this is to me a no-brainer, but it should be a little closer because people forget about Terry Pendleton and MVP. He won at third base, and then Chipper just kind of took over and played there for 15 years. So I put Chipper Jones there because, again, he's one of the greatest switch-hitting players ever in the history of the game, but Terry Pendleton didn't want to overlook him, but right now it's got to be Chipper Jones pretty much hands down.
Yeah, it's Chipper, but a shout-out to Terry Pendleton, yes.
Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and do my sound bite here. It's obviously Chipper. BJ, Kevin, you wasn't on this show, and BJ was like, so being who you go at third base? I was like, Terry Pendleton. And BJ gave me this look like, you going to go with who? Terry Pendleton. And we get out the show, and BJ, I said, well, BJ, who would you win when BJ hit me with Chipper? And I'm like, okay, Kevin's probably going to fire me on Monday, but that was one of my many bad takes. But yeah, third base is undeniable. Even Terry Pendleton was nice, and I think he was the coach for the Braves for a long time. But no, it's Chipper all day long.
All right, so that leaves us with a starting pitcher, and we're just going to pick one reliever out of it. My starter, I mean, to me, if you listen to the show, it's no contest. My favorite guy for the Braves, Greg Maddux. That's who I'm rolling with. I will roll with him every single day of the week. I don't even care what argument you give. It's Greg Maddux.
Yeah, starter, I went Greg Maddux, and you could go Glavine, you could go Smoltz. I actually went Smoltz with my relief pitcher. Had an incredible year as the closer. So I go Maddux as my starter, Smoltz is my closer.
Yes, yes, I'm gonna go with both of you guys. Yeah, Greg Maddux and obviously John Smokes. I was blessed enough one day to be in the elevator with John Smokes, and I'm staring at him. Before he got off the elevator, he looked at me and says, "Yes, it's me." And he walked off like I ain't even. Yeah, it's me.
I did not have John Smoltz as my reliever. I know that might be sacrilege. I know he is a great closer. I still view him more as a starter, so I went with Craig Kimbrell. Although there's a number of guys you could go with there, I actually think underrated and probably didn't fit the bill of with the club long enough. But Billy Wagner, when he was with Atlanta, about as good as it got there as well on the back end. But I went with Kimbrell as my closer. What do you think? Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. We'd love to hear from you. Your all-star Atlanta Braves list. Leave a comment on our Facebook page as well. This is 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Again, hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. Good to have you here, 3 and Out, on this Wednesday. College football rapidly approaching. And BJ, this week we've been talking about the SEC. Yesterday we talked about the ACC Atlantic. Today, SouthernPigskin.com focuses on the ACC Coastal, which has been wild and crazy. You've had 7 years, 7 different winners. Last year there was no Coastal or Atlantic really, so I guess maybe Notre Dame was the winner. So maybe 8 different winners in 8 different years if you want to look at it from that standpoint. But no consistency at all in who's sitting there at the top. Is 2021 going to be any different?
Well, there's depth and balance. You know, there are a number of good teams in this division, and I think Miami and North Carolina and Miami in some form or fashion are top 15 teams with the potential to be top 10. And I think for us, slight lean North Carolina. You look at North Carolina and Miami, again, both top contenders, and I think the top contenders to Clemson in the ACC, and both have great quarterbacks. D'Eriq King at Miami, Sam Howell at North Carolina. I think there's a little more returning experience for the Tar Heels, and that's why we lean UNC. They lose a lot at wide receiver and running back, but remember, they get in Ty Chandler, transfer from Tennessee at running back to go along with Sam Howell, who has 68 passing touchdowns through 2 seasons. And here's an important fact to remember about North Carolina, and sometimes this is a position group, Ben, we overlook. They return all 5 starters on the offensive line. So that's a big deal for Sam Howell and Ty Chandler, and return 9 starters defensively. I think they're going to be really good in the secondary. Miami's got great playmakers. They had Charleston Rambo from Oklahoma to go along with Mike Harley, Will Mallory at tight end, a good offensive line as well. I think there's a little more returning experience for North Carolina defensively. You have a question maybe about D'Eriq King's health. I think both North Carolina and Miami are really good, deserve to be top 15 in the preseason. But for me, in terms of the favorite for us, we lean North Carolina in the Coastal there is the number 1.
Yeah, I like North Carolina as well. Sam Howell had a true freshman year, BJ, unlike any other. He was in a class all by himself. I mean, being able to replace what they had at running back last year, De'Ami Brown and that receiving core he had last year was about as good as it gets. But having all 5 starters back on the offensive line proves that you're going to be able to protect your greatest asset. That's what kind of scares me for Miami, who you have at number 2. Number 1, I mean, you're going to take away do they get away from what D'Eriq King does the best, and that's utilize his legs as well as his arm, because you got to protect him from himself next year. I mean, getting Charleston Rambo means they're going to definitely try to use the passing game to be able to open up for the running game, but it's gonna rise and set on the health of, or the ACL of, D'Eriq King. But yeah, Sam Howell about as good as it get. I mean, if Sam Howell was not playing at the same time as, I don't know, Trevor Lawrence, we'll be talking about this boy. This young man a lot more than we do. But yeah, Sam Howell, North Carolina going to be one of the ones to watch. And if Miami can keep D'Eriq King healthy, especially with that opener, they got a shot to make some noise as well.
All right, so after North Carolina and Miami, who's a surprise team that people think, they could be maybe okay, maybe a little fledgling, but might actually have a surprise season?
I think people overlook Pitt a lot, Pittsburgh, and they were so good up front defensively a year ago, just dominating at the line of scrimmage. And we have Pitt at number 3, slightly ahead of Virginia Tech. I think there's very little separation between these teams, and that's what makes the ACC Coastal so crazy, but also so much fun. But you look at Pitt, they return a veteran quarterback in Kenny Pickett. The next game Kenny Pickett plays in will be his 40th. So you think about experience at the quarterback position, that matters. They still are really good defensively with Cam Bright, John Morgan, Servicia Dennis, and you're talking about a team that is going to be physical at the line of scrimmage and is going to find a way to kind of make you uncomfortable. Virginia Tech's really good defensively as well. Amari Barno, one of the national leaders in tackles for loss. Braxton Burmeister takes over at quarterback. Remember, you had Hendon Hooker transfer to Tennessee. But I think a team to watch might be Georgia Tech. And we have Georgia Tech 5th. Ben, I know you like their talent a lot. You talk about Jahmyr Gibbs, Jeff Sims, Jordan Mason, I believe, is back at running back as well. Tariq Carpenter comes back at safety. So I think Georgia Tech could be a team that exceeds expectations, even with a tough schedule out there in the Coastal.
Yeah, we'll learn a lot about Pitt. We'll learn a lot about Tennessee the second game of the year when they face off against each other. BJ, Pitt is always going to bring a defense. Whenever you talk about what Pickett brings to that 40 stars in big time college football got to mean something, because this is a guy that's really seen it all, done it all. but he's going to need a lot of help from that defense. I'm always looking forward to seeing what Coach Collins is going to do when two of your best players on offense were both true freshmen last year, and Gibbs and Sims. Those guys got a lot of valuable experience last year. Gibbs is about as good as it gets. Kick it to him, he can take it to the house. Put the ball in his hand in the screen game, take it to the house. I think this young man doesn't have, a lot of flaws to his game, but you're going to have to go out there and get it done. Georgia Tech is not is going to scare anybody with whoever they got on the schedule this year, but I still think that makes them a very, very scary team. And I think Coach Collins understands that he doesn't get that leeway anymore. Even if you got a very, very young team, Kevin, to me, with Georgia Tech is going to come down to, can they play complementary defense? I say that a lot. People are like, well, Ben, that's your take when it comes to a lot of teams. Well, most teams are run by their offense. And Sims is going to have to take care of the football. You're going to have to get the ball in Gibbs' hand, him and Mason. But for me, BJ, I think it's going to come down to the defense. Can Coach Collins get those guys playing at a high level? Because once the competition starts, it's not going to stop. But, yeah, watch out for them boys from Atlanta, man. They're going to be trying to, be some party crashers this year, because it's always that prestigious number of six. 6 wins in college football is very, very hard to do. Get away from the Alabamas of the world. Get away from the Oklahomas of the world. It is hard to win. But if Coach Collins can get to 6 wins this year, we're talking about potentially ACC Coach of the Year type stuff when you look at how young his team is.
Well, and it was very young a year ago, Kevin. I mean, you started Jeff Sims, the true freshman, right away. And remember, Tech won that game at Florida State. But also Jahmyr Gibbs, so versatile. You mentioned it. You see him in the return game. You see him as a receiver. He can be a feature back. And don't forget about Jordan Mason, who had 900 yards a couple of years ago. I know Georgia's got really good depth at running back, but so does Georgia Tech. And a very young team a year ago, one of the youngest teams in the country. And you're talking about a program still moving forward from the triple option of Paul Johnson. I think this team surprises some people. I think they win a game they're not supposed to. Brutal schedule, Kev. We know that. I mean, the schedule, especially the second half, is really, really difficult. But I think Georgia Tech, that youth from a year ago where you were up, you were down, you were hot, you were cold, I think you're going to be a little more consistent this year. And I think Sims is going to have a big year.
And you look at, is this the side of the conference that is the depth side? You have the good at the top in Clemson. Is this where the meat and potatoes of the league kind of resides, is in that ACC Coastal? I know we talked about the ACC kickoff. There's 14 quarterbacks coming. It looks to be a young and solid quarterback crop in the ACC with some guys at the top. Is this where the meat and potatoes lies there for the conference?
Yeah, I think probably. And I think 2 teams in the middle there that play really good defense, Virginia Tech and Pitt. And it's hard to kind of separate them on paper. When you look at a lot of these preseason rankings, again, we lean Pitt. You'll see them right next to each other in some form or fashion, Pitt, Virginia Tech. I think this is where the depth is. This is where the balance is. I mean, even moving down the division some, Virginia brings back 18, 19 starters, a quarterback that made some plays last year in Brennan Armstrong, and they're not going to be an easy game. Virginia is somebody that can beat you on a Saturday. You're talking about another team with a really good front seven, good defensive play. So while in the ACC Atlantic, it's Clemson, and then you're looking at NC State possibly, you're looking at Boston College maybe, and then you have some questions. I think week to week there's more parity in the ACC Coastal, and I think North Carolina and Miami both deserve national acclaim, and the spotlight's going to be on them with a number of national games. But don't forget about the rest of the division. It's going to be hard to make it week to week in this division, even for North Carolina and Miami, without being pushed to the brink. So I like Pitt. I like Virginia Tech. I think Georgia Tech's a team that can play with even the big boys on their schedule, and I think Virginia's a team that's better than people think. Duke may have a little bit of a rebuilding year, but Coach Cutcliffe is always going to have those guys ready to go. But there's a lot of balance in the ACC Coastal. Yes, 100%.
I like that too, though. I mean, Kevin, I know you mentioned at one point, 8 different winners, the last 8 different years, if you want to count Notre Dame last year. I think that's a good thing. It shows that each team is definitely doing what they need to do to go out there and be competitive. And sustainability is hard. So when you talk about the Coastal Division, North Carolina, the same Georgia Tech team that went to Florida State and beat Florida State was the same Florida State team that beat North Carolina last year. So don't be thinking it's going to be easy wins. I mean, I understand that just North Carolina is going to be more talented than most teams in the Coastal Division. That doesn't mean they're going to beat them, because now they got the spotlight on it. It's easy. Ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun. So now I know they're used to going out there hunting. Can they deal with being the hunted? Kevin and BJ, it should be very, very exciting. But once again, watch out for them young men from Atlanta, because I'm telling you, they still a win they weren't supposed to get. Could that steamroll the rest of their season? Nobody's really worried about when anybody plays Clemson this year. But everybody outside of that, I think it's fair game.
Well, but it's an interesting point about North Carolina because, a couple of years ago, they kind of snuck up on people. And then last year you had modest expectations. Well, now you've seen them in the preseason top 10. And, you look at their schedule. They have Notre Dame. Could they play Clemson in the ACC championship game? You have Miami. I think the spotlight is on North Carolina, and I think they're ready for it with Mac Brown and Sam Howell and the veterans defensively. Again, you bring in Ty Chandler, the offensive line. So I know normally we think about North Carolina as being maybe a sleeper team. Are they ready to step up and be a showcase team in the ACC? Remember, they were really good last year, but lost to a rebuilding Florida State team, lost to Virginia in a game that was kind of unique and strange at the end with a lot of points from Virginia in the fourth quarter. So North Carolina has the pressure. They have the spotlight. Can they handle being one of those teams that's talked about nationally week to week?
We'll see. We'll see, because I know that BJ, I know a highlight game for North Carolina last year was against Miami, and obviously they ran away with the game. That was all rushing. That was all running the football. I mean, Sam Howell, he could have came over here with us and just, ate some popcorn, because those two guys that had a running back last year was incredible, Carter and those guys. But I just think that when everybody's watching, now I get to see what you really are. It's easy to go out there and play well when you under the radar. They're not flying under the radar. The guy who had the most wins in North Carolina history left, went to Texas and came back and still had the most wins. That's Mac Brown. He definitely got a big time playing Sam Howell. Let's see how good Sam Howell is. BJ got the 5 guys in front of him, but he got a lot of guys to replace on the outside as well as the running game.
Again, quick look at the ACC Coastal. You can go to southernpigskin.com. Full breakdown of the ACC Coastal, where, again, they're trying to eliminate some of that stereotype of the wild and wacky ACC Coastal where anything and everything usually does happen. We've got more to come. It's 3 and Out on this Wednesday. We'll get to what are some of the expectations for some of these coaches. You mentioned North Carolina. What about a Mac Brown? What are the expectations here in 2021? We'll get to that in the final hour, as well as Gaurav Vidak will join us here on 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Again, Braves off following the All-Star break here. Won't be back until Friday, but we do have another NBA Finals game tonight, BJ and Ben. And I know we got off 2-0, and the Bucks came roaring back to win Game 3. Game 4 tonight, you still feeling like it's Chris Paul and the championship of destiny that we keep hearing about here in the NBA?
I don't know. I mean, Giannis has been extraordinary. I mean, absolutely extraordinary when you think about some of this scoring, 40-plus points and just taking over. I think if he can get, a second scorer to step up, if it could be Holiday, could it be Middleton, could it be Lopez? Lopez had a 30-point game against Atlanta. The home team seems to have an advantage here in the finals. Now, if Phoenix wins tonight, that changes the dynamic of the series. But right now, I just, watching Giannis and Chris Paul and, these two teams, it's incredible basketball. But I wouldn't be surprised if the Bucks tie it up.
Yeah, BJ, that's not going to be well if you playing for the Suns and you're a Suns fan, because Giannis is a guy that bigger than the points he makes. I mean, the impact he has on both ends of the floor. Obviously, they're going to have to speed up those free throws. I mean, everybody, but that's what he's known for, right? Every time he hit the free throw line to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. If Giannis and and the Bucks can find a way to get Game 4, it's going to make it a total different series, because it's easy to go out there and play loose when you up by 2, when you up 3 games in the series. But yeah, I think they tie the series up tonight. I think Giannis comes out with a big showing, and I agree with you, Kevin. It's supposed to be a storybook ending for Chris Paul. But we've never seen a storybook ending for Chris Paul. He's still writing that story. If it does happen that way, it's going to be great. But Giannis, I think he's going to do all he can to will his team to tie the series up tonight.
Yeah, we'll see what happens on the hardwood. But again, I think a lot of folks, if you don't have a rooting interest in it, it's Chris Paul's the guy that's kind of been around a while, never been there, and you'd like to see him get the ring. But I mean, Giannis kind of gutting it out here. He got hurt late in that Hawks series, as you said, BJ, and he's been going out there, laying it out there for the Bucks. And you want to talk about a franchise possibly getting a championship that you wouldn't expect. Milwaukee's got to be it. And would there ever be a more perfect time than now, where the Lakers got eliminated? I mean, you went through the Nets to get to this point. Would there be a better time than now for Milwaukee to take advantage?
Well, I think you have one of the best players in the world, clearly. And he's even shown more than I think a lot of people thought he had with what he's done offensively here, and maybe still not 100% healthy. So this is what you want. It's the finals. You want one of the greatest point guards of all time, Chris Paul. You want one of the greatest players on the planet right now, Giannis, going back and forth and kind of leading their teams, willing their teams. But if Giannis goes for 40 again, Ben, I mean, you're talking about one of the great individual performances we've seen. So the pressure is on him clearly, but I think it's great drama, great theater. And if I have to pick it, I think the Bucks tie it up tonight 2-2.
Chris Paul going to do all he can. Devin Booker. I mean, DeAndre Ayton. I mean, people ain't talking about Ayton, BJ, and his resurgence. I mean, it could be because of him when it's all said and done. But Giannis is not a back-to-back, MVP of the league for nothing. The guy can flat out get it done. And if you the NBA, you love it. You loving it when it comes to rating. Too small, small market. Teams finding a way to get it done. Had it been a sweep, everybody was like, okay. But now the drama really starts tonight if they can get Game 4 with the Bucks, because now it's made the best team win. But yeah, I think it's going to be great theater tonight. But I'm looking to see somebody not named Giannis, not named Chris Paul, step up to the plate.
And again, it should be a great game. We'll have it for you starting 8 p.m. pregame. I believe tip-off just after 9 o'clock this evening. We've got more to come. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. It is the final hour of 3 and Out here on this Wednesday. We'll hear from Gaurav Vidak talking shop. Look at the Braves coming up in the second half of the MLB season. What moves potentially are out there? Do they make moves in light of the Ronald Acuna Jr. injury? We'll get his thoughts on that coming up in just a little bit. Also look back at the draft, what the Braves have done there. Also, what are some of the expectations for some of the top coaches we see here in the South? We also often talk about the teams, but what does it mean for these coaches? Where's that level that they have got set for them and their program? We'll get to that coming up in just a little bit. But BJ, last hour we mentioned the ACC sending 14 quarterbacks to the ACC kickoff. The SEC only sending 3 in the entire league. Where are we at here in terms of quarterbacks? Well, glad you asked, because we set out to put out our top 10 quarterbacks in kind of the Southern Pigskin area, the ACC, SEC, and Sun Belt, and kind of come up with a comp list of where we see these quarterbacks between us here on the show. Christian Gokel, I believe PJ Zuko with a vote in this as well. And we started off Matt Corral, number 1. Again, as the compilation of all of our lists, we collectively had Matt Corral as number 1.
38 teams in the SEC, ACC, and Sun Belt. We're ranking quarterbacks from those leagues alone, from the Southern Pigskin FBS coverage area, so ACC, SEC, Sun Belt. So when we start getting the hate mail saying, I can't believe you don't have Spencer Rattler in the top 10. Okay, understand, it's the SEC, the ACC, and the Sun Belt, and this is the 3 of us, Christian and PJ, averaged our polls together. Matt Corral 1, Sam Howell 2, Grayson McCall 3, DJ Uiagalelei 4, JT Daniels 5, De'Aaron King 6, Bryce Young 7, Levi Lewis 8, Emory Jones 9, Malik Cunningham 10. And Ben, I think those are clearly some of the best quarterbacks in the country.
You guys got me over there? Just making sure.
Yes.
I thought you got my. No, some of these guys are some of the best, quarterbacks in the country, regardless of whatever conference they're in. But I mean, Matt Corral. I know JT Daniels is going to get out of England because he's playing for the Dogs. They got a chance to be one of the last teams standing. Matt Corral, about as good as it get. Him and Lane Kiffin in year 2 could be very, very scary. Sam Howell is going to be one of the headliners. Almost 70, pads of touchdowns in only 2 years. Grayson McCall can, once again, the same thing what we said about North Carolina, BJ. Can they deal with being the hunted now? You look at the season they had last year with Coastal. DJU, I'm not even going to try to butcher his last name. Can he carry on that great tradition at quarterback at Clemson? You saw one sample size last year against Notre Dame, and just like we say, about Jake Fromm in the national championship, they were winning because of DJ, but the defense forgot to show up that day. JT Daniels, is he going to be the guy? With the guys they got in the transfer portal, with the guys they got bringing back, even though you don't got George Pickens, they should be good. De'Aaron King, it's going to come down to his health. Bryce Young, another 5-star at Alabama. Surprise, surprise. Levi Lewis with them Raging Cages. Look, I think with Louisiana, BJ, they're going to have to go out there and really establish themselves with Coastal Carolina is coming. Emory Jones, I'm biased when it comes to Emory, but Emory will be the first quarterback recruited by Dan Mullen to try to go out there and run that offense. And obviously Cunningham, at Louisville, BJ, I'm just really, really looking to see if he can get that offense going, because this time last year, BJ, we were talking about, even though he ain't got Tutu Atwell and those guys, thought they was going to make more noise. We'll get a chance to see. I think with Louisville versus Ole Miss first game of the year, get a chance to see 2 big ones. And obviously Bryce Young and De'Aaron King get to kick off the year as well with JT Daniels, the DJU.
And BJ, kind of how our list came together, you have 3 guys in the top 10 here who are getting their first shot at significant playing time. DJ Uiagalelei obviously came in against Notre Dame. We know that story. Bryce Young, I mean, he was behind Mac Jones, wasn't going to see a lot of time. And Emory Jones has been waiting his turn there at Florida. Which one of those 3, I mean, they're all in pretty nice situations, might be best suited to just step in right away and go?
I think DJ Uiagalelei just goes to show how high the expectations are, that in our composite list, he comes in at number 4, and he's only got a couple of starts, right? He started against Notre Dame, and he started against Boston College last year, but he was so incredible in that Notre Dame game. just the touch on the downfield throws and the composure in clutch situations. I mean, they scored 40 points in a top 5 matchup on national TV, and that was your first playing time ever. So I think all of us have very high expectations for DJU, and I think the thought is that not only is he going to be good, he's going to be great. He's going to be a continuation of what we saw a year ago against Notre Dame. Big guy, right? I mean, I think we had a Clemson guest this week saying don't be surprised if they run him a lot against Georgia with design runs, physical player. So I think DJ Uiagalelei, look, you're at Clemson. The expectations are make the college football playoff. If they do it this year, it'll be the 7th year in a row. But I think he's one of the most interesting players in the country because he's not played that much, but I think we all agree, not only are you talking about one of the best in the country, you're talking about a Heisman contender here.
Yeah, DJU is probably going to be best suited because he has been out there. And it's who he went out there with, right? He went out there against Notre Dame. And, I mean, it was fireworks. I mean, neither one of the defense showed up that day, even though Notre Dame got the best. They did make one stop. Bryce Young is going to have probably the best defense of all these guys, even though Clemson, BJ, and that defensive line is going to be about as good as it gets. But for me, I hope it's Emory Jones because he's been there longer, right? He's been in that offense a long time. Sat behind, guys like Felipe Franks. You look at what, Kyle Trask did last year, and he is the guy best suited, right? I mean, I think Dan Mullen said, I don't need a great runner. I need a willing runner. Well, he got will. So I hope it is Emory Jones. Bryce Young is going to have the best all-around team. DJU has already been out there. And, we're going to get to wait and see, but we'll get a chance to see Bryce, versus De'Aaron King. We'll get a chance to see DJU versus JT Daniels, and we'll get a chance to see Cunningham versus Matt Corral. So some of these guys get to stare each other in the face come week 1. It should be exciting to see.
And again, quarterback's so important when you talk about this and teams moving forward. Those young guys getting their first shot. A lot of experienced guys, though, there as well, BJ. What guy do you think, if we were to go back December 5th, 6th, and redo it, who moves up the most? Who maybe you think slides down a little bit?
Well, I think the chance for De'Aaron King and Bryce Young to move up. I mean, De'Aaron King, maybe a little bit of hesitation because of the injury, but one of the best players in the country at Houston and Miami. So dynamic, a great leader. I think he's going to have a big year. And then Bryce Young, I mean, look at the Alabama standard. I mean, every year, what is it? Every recruiting class has won a national title with Nick Saban. So I think you just assume Bryce Young has been prepared for this, is going to put up huge numbers. I think he's going to have a great connection with John Mechie. They're going to be extremely productive. And I think Emory Jones has a chance too. I mean, this guy, you talk about waiting your turn and being ready for the moment. I think Emory Jones is poised to have big-time production. I think the guys at the top are going to do what we expect. I think we mentioned with DJU, I had Sam Howell number 1 on my list. It's amazing because you think about Sam Howell, you've talked about him for so long. He's just now an upperclassman. He's just now a junior. So you talk about Sam Howell so much, you kind of forget that he's not this senior that's been around forever. He came in and started as a true freshman and then had last year's sophomore season, and he already has over 70 total touchdowns. And now he has that experience. Now he's done it for a couple of years. So I think Sam Howell, I mean, Heisman Trophy candidate for sure, right up there with Matt Corral. Ben, like you mentioned, in the second year now with Lane Kiffin, they're only going to be more cohesive. And then I think Grayson McCall, chatting with Jamie Chadwell a few weeks ago, remember he told us at the end of the year Grayson McCall was playing with a broken thumb. So you're talking about a guy that not only was a freshman last year and finished in the top 5 in the country in passer rating, but was a freshman with a broken finger. So you add Grayson McCall being healthy to having some experience now. I mean, he could be even more proficient potentially. And then JT Daniels, to me, he's the ultimate X factor because JT Daniels is the quarterback for a team that expects to win the national title and had kind of that 4-game sample size last year, coming over from SC, hasn't had the full season. Now he's got the hype. The preseason spotlight is there. The talent is there. The playmakers are there. Kind of what's the expectation level for JT Daniels? So I'm fascinated by all these guys.
I mean, and DJ, I mean, the what you break down. And obviously, I'm assuming these guys are, just looking at the list. If I'm JT Daniels, I'm saying, hey, man, Matt Corral, I'm coming for your spot. If I'm DJU, I'm looking at Sam Howell saying, I'm coming for your spot. If I'm Levi Lewis, I'm looking at Grayson McCall saying, listen, I'm coming for your spot as individually, and my team coming for your spot collectively. You got a lot of guys on here that's going to be chasing each other, but a guy to watch out for is Mr. Cunningham from Louisville. I'm telling you, if he puts up numbers like he did 2 years ago, they might not get the W's, BJ, but as far as numbers, he's about as good as it gets. I mean, I'm not saying he's the best on this list, but as far as a dual threat, could Mr. Cunningham be looking at Mr. De'Aaron King saying, I'm coming for your spot? So I think it's going to be exciting. You got some of the best quarterbacks in the country, and in our view, in our covering area. But, hey, man, DJU at Clemson, I think when it's all said and done, that young man might be the cream of the crop, even if Bryce Young is in Tuscaloosa.
We've got more to come here this hour on 3 and Out, including what are the expectations for some of these guys, coaches, to go out there and get it done. And Gaurav Vidak will join us. We'll talk some Braves baseball as they enter the second half. What are they looking to do trade-wise? Look back at the draft, how the Braves do in the draft as well. It's 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. All right, we talked about some of these top quarterbacks we're going to be seeing, but what about their head coaches? What kind of pressure are they feeling? Look at some of the expectations that they have going into 2021. We'll run through them first. Give me like a one-liner about these guys, and we'll go back and break it down. But let's start with Kirby Smart first. What's the expectation 2021 on Kirby Smart?
College football playoff.
Not the national championship game.
I think there would be an implication there, but I have a hard time saying if you don't win the national title, it's a disappointment. I think if you make the college football playoff, that's a successful season.
But I didn't say win the championship. I said make it to the championship. I mean, again, with a 14 playoff, there's getting to the playoffs and there's advancing to the game. You don't think it's get to the championship
I think
game.
Christian has said this before, and I agree with him. I don't think historically we're necessarily going to remember who finished number 2. Just like most years with the college basketball Final Four, you don't necessarily remember who lost in the championship game. Kind of making the Final Four is considered its own distinction. So, yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if you could make the national title and obviously win, but I think the expectation and the standard is make the college football playoff.
Kirby Smart, I mean, make the college football. I think it has to be win it because, BJ, once again, we talking about different people getting judged by different things. If Kirby Smart was good enough to just make the college football playoff, there wouldn't be any pressure on him. So for me, I think it is make it and win it because you got the biggest brand in the state. You one of the top recruiters in the state. You got one of the top, in the state. You one of the top recruiters in the country, one of the top teams in the country. You got to be able to put it all together because we've already seen him make it to both the college football playoff and the national championship. So for me, Kevin, when you talk about Kirby Smart, finish the job.
All right. Dan Mullen there at Florida.
For me, it's establish yourself this season as the clear number 2 in the East. And what I mean by that is, we've talked to a lot of analysts who have said, hey, Florida's going to be 3rd or 4th in the East. And I think most people agree this is going to be potentially a little bit of a year where you take a step back when you talk about losing Kyle Pitts, one of the best tight ends in SEC history, when you talk about Kyle Trask, when you talk about losing the playmakers you did. And a lot of people feel like Georgia is the clear number 1. Well, make sure you're the clear number 2. I think if Florida goes out, wins 9 or 10 games, and is the clear number 2 team in the SEC East and, puts a lot of separation between themselves and Kentucky and Missouri, I think that's something that could be considered meeting the standard for this season.
Dan Mullen. It's time. It's time to show and prove. It's time to get off this almost. Can't live off. I'm gonna say this, BJ. Maybe you like this. No more living off your reputation. Because right now it's been good enough, right? I mean, it's been good enough for what he's done. Everybody started talking about only coach to ever go back-to-back New Year's 6. Only coach to do this and do that. Never been to the college football playoff. And you just got an extension. So, and I know, I got it. Earn your money. Because you just got a $1.5 million extension based off of what? For losing the last 4 games.
Okay, but does that mean you have to beat Georgia and win the East this year?
Yes, BJ, because the fact of the matter is the only reason why Dan Mullen isn't under more pressure to win the Natty is because Kirby Smart has not won the Natty. So they ain't bothering him like they could. But could you imagine if Georgia would have, I don't know, played cover 2, not let that ball get thrown to Devonta Smith and won it? Number one, I couldn't be on the show because I couldn't be living in the state of Georgia dealing with that nonsense. But I just think for me, BJ's coach has a lot to do with the other coach. Kirby hasn't won it all. So Dan Mullen, okay, I got a little bit of time. But BJ, it's when people go, well, why was Steve Spurrier as great as a coach as he was? Well, he played during the era of Bobby Bowden. That had to mean something. My rival team and coach is one of the great. That's what people don't talk about enough. The pressure is on, which I think we'll get to Jimbo. The pressure is on the best coach in your division and what the best coaching team in your division has done. So last year during the All SEC schedule, Dan Mullen won the East. Almost beat Alabama. Had the JV team against Oklahoma and the nonsense. So for me, you got to go out there and earn your money. Or are you a one-trick pony or you a one-hit wonder? Because we saw you do it last year. Can you go back-to-back?
All right, moving along. Mac Brown at North Carolina. Obviously, we know what Mac did at Texas. He's trying to build something again there at North Carolina. What is the expectation here in 2021?
I think it's win the Coastal. To me, if you're saying you have to win the ACC and beat Clemson, I think that's a hard thing to say sitting here in the summer. So to me, it's win the Coastal. As you mentioned, Kevin, the Coastal's been nuts. I mean, anytime you think you know who the best team is, somebody else wins it. Live up to the expectations. Win the Coastal.
And I know this is crazy. Can you coach a Heisman winner? Because didn't he have Vince Young, right? BJ lost to Reggie Bush, right? Now, coming off that year before, you had a big time quarterback in Vince Young. I'm not saying they're gonna win the Natty. Can he coach a Heisman trophy? Because that's the only thing I don't think he had. Wait a minute. Did Ricky Wiggins never coached a Heisman winner at the quarterback position? Sam Howell is good enough. Can he win the division, and can his quarterback be hosting up the Heisman Trophy at the end of the year?
Could be interesting. I don't know that they get there this year. I mean, he's got the quarterback, but again, they've kind of they're falling into that Clemsoning mode, BJ, where they're good. What happened last Saturday? And then they kind of like they always have that. What just happened to him on the schedule? What about Manny Diaz there at Miami?
Still, I mean, you said it. This has been a team that probably hasn't done that as many times as folks thought they were going to when they came into this league. And if you're Miami, you see that North Carolina's getting all the preseason love. You're looking around going, look at us, win the Coastal. You play Alabama. I think it's hard to say you're going to go undefeated or something like that. But can you win the Coastal and have your chance against Clemson? Yes, absolutely.
Ooh, BJ, I know you and Kevin gonna hate this when I say this. I know the hype is already happening. Can you upset Alabama game one? Because you notice. Listen, I'm just saying, because it's moments, right? It's not the whole season for certain coaches. It's one of the, oh man, they almost did this, should have did that. The hype has already started. I know they're gonna hype it up, but BJ, Kevin, if Miami can upset Alabama, I mean, I'm just saying, coaches getting contract extensions ain't even winning bowl games or championship games. So can Manny Diaz and Derek King do the unthinkable and beat them boys in Atlanta, known as the Alabama Crimson Tide? I'm just saying, for me, can you beat them Crimson Tide boys?
That will be the story of the story of the season if they do that. All right, let's move on. Shane Beamer, South Carolina. Obviously, he's got a legacy type name when it comes to college football coaching, but realistically, what's the expectation there 2021?
I think it's improve and show progress. And I think this is one of those situations where it's hard to put an exact number on it. Maybe that means 5 wins, maybe it's 6, get to the bowl game, maybe it's 7 for some people. But the finish to last season was disappointing for South Carolina. I think you need to just show improvement and show that there's progress and you're moving in the right direction. Now, again, I don't think that means 2 or 3 wins. I think you're better than that. But I think this is one of those situations in year one where it's hard to say you have to win 7 games. I think you have to validate the optimism. There's a lot of people who look at South Carolina as a program on the rise now. A lot of reason for excitement. Well, validate that. Beat the teams you're supposed to beat. Win a couple of games where maybe it's 50-50, and then see if you can get in a bowl game, but you've got to show progress.
Only lose to Florida and Georgia in the East, because the whole thing about it is, BJ, man, we were saying if Florida and Georgia is the clear-cut number 1, number 2, we don't know who's going to be that number 3. South Carolina said, okay, well, if it's up for grabs, we're going to try to snatch it. Got to beat Mizzou, got to beat Vandy, got to beat Tennessee, got to beat Kentucky. I know it's easy for me to say that, but if you Beamer ball club and Kentucky used to always do the unthinkable when he had those teams, so be the 3rd team in the East.
Again, I think that's very lofty. Yeah, for Shane Beamer in year number 1. Moving on, finally, Jimbo Fisher, Texas A&M. Of course, we know he's got the big contract. He's got Texas A&M moving in the right direction, but what is the realistic expectation 2021 here?
8-point game a year ago. I think that the goal is make the SEC championship game. You'll see probably Georgia in that game. Can you win and make the playoff? Potentially, but you've got to win that division and you've got to beat Alabama. And a lot of people feel like with, I think, 18 returning starters, Alabama replacing a lot, this may be the year for A&M to win and finally beat Nick Saban, finally beat Alabama. That's the expectation around this program. Make it to Atlanta.
You got to be one of the last 4 teams standing, because making it to Atlanta ain't gonna be enough. And it's not because of Alabama; it's because of Coach O. Coach Orgeron did. Coach Orgeron at LSU may never ever go back to another, national championship. But in 2019, that's arguably the greatest team we've ever seen in the college football playoff era. I'm just saying, BJ, for me, Kevin, for me, Jimbo Fisher set the tone for guaranteed contracts for coaches. He started it with a $75 million 10-year guaranteed contract. And since then, outside of almost beating Clemson, getting the brakes beat off you last year by Alabama, hasn't been much to talk about. Can you put on your best Coach Orgeron impression? Because Alabama is a standard. LSU's got a reason natty. Texas A&M, outside of not having to worry about recruiting against Texas because you're in the SEC, you got a big-time coach. No Jameis Winston, BJ, big problem for Texas A&M. They need to be one of the last 4 teams.
So there's a quick look at some of these coaches and what some of the expectations are heading in here to 2021. As you said, Kirby Smart, I think it's get to the championship game or bust. BJ, you said just make it to the playoffs. I think you want to get to that championship game with what you got out in front of you. You've got more to come here on 3 and Out. We'll chat with Gaurav Vidoc, Talking Chop. What are the Braves looking to do here in the second half? He'll join us next here on 3 and Out. Well, the All-Star break is quickly coming to a close. We had the game last night, day off around Major League Baseball, only one game tomorrow. Braves will be back at it on Friday, and everybody immediately looks to what is this team going to do in the second half with virtually their entire outfield is new guys from the start of the season. No catcher from the start of the season there as well. Our next guest hopes to help us out with that. Gaurav Vidak, Talking Chop, joins us. Gaurav, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me on again.
What do you think is Alex Anthopoulos' philosophy here? Are we letting it play out another week or so to see where this team sits, currently 4 games behind the Mets, or are they trying to be aggressive and actually go after this thing in the East?
The loss of Ronald makes everything a lot more difficult. I think you'll probably see him try and navigate next to the next couple of series, and if all things point to a downward trend, I think you might see the Braves try and sell a few of the assets that they have. Luckily, what they have going for them is that young roster under team control, and they'll be able to rebuild real quickly. So what might be a lost season right now because of Ronald doesn't necessarily mean we're lost for the next year as well.
Could there be a scenario where the Braves try to trade Freddie Freeman in your mind?
I simply don't see it. You look down at the minors, and there's really no one there that can even come close to his level of production, and no one that's really even ready to take that next step, unless you can find someone in free agency to take over. I don't see it happening. Freddie has been adamant about wanting to stay here. His family's here. He's seeing his son grow up here. As much as I know he's from California, I really do think this is home for him. And while the Braves, while he might not take, a quote unquote discount to stay here, and the Braves should, bring the money to him, I don't see any real possibility where Freeman leaves.
The Braves typically don't pay that big money you see these other organizations paying. Is Freddie Freeman going to potentially be the first player to kind of get the Braves out of the way in which they do things financially, to say, look, this guy's more than earned the money? Are they really going to show him the money in a way that the Braves usually don't do?
I mean, if they want to keep a lot of their fans, they really have to, right, guys? He's been the backbone of the team for quite some time now, and he's entering his prime. You have the core of the team is still young enough where, again, you can rebuild rather quickly, and there's enough talent on the roster where it's really not that difficult to. So I think Anthopoulos really needs to make this an absolute priority for the team and for himself, because without them, you're talking about a really massive step back without Freeman's production in the lineup, as soon as next year.
And that's certainly in the longer picture. What about the shorter picture? What moves, if they choose to, make sense for Atlanta, i.e. you're going to make them and actually get better and not, patch one hole to create another one?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest holes, or the biggest things that I foresee happening if the Braves decide to sell, is you'll see the likes of, Charlie Morton, who's done extremely well over probably like the last month of play. Drew Smiley's starting to turn it around. Will Smith is starting to look good. Those kind of pieces that are great for a postseason run, I could see the Braves trying to really take advantage of it and get rid of those guys and try and bring them a few more prospects into the fold. While I don't think any of them will net you, a heavy hitter prospect or anything like that, it will help with the depth in the minors and help create some more competition for these guys.
So if Atlanta does try to make a trade to acquire veteran major league players, who are some of the names fans should be aware of? Who are some of the possible trade targets?
I think the biggest one, and kind of at the forefront, which would be a kind of a dream scenario for myself, would have to be Joey Gallo from the Rangers. Just a huge bat, plays a really good outfield. With Ronald coming back next year, you potentially have an outfield of Pache, Acuna, and Gallo, and that's a really, really dynamic outfield, especially in the corners with Gallo and Acuna's production. So I think they're only going to try and find, those players under team control or under contract for, I would say 2 to 3 years. And that starts probably with Gallo itself.
Because the Braves are obviously, still trying to show some fight, does that put more pressure on the front office to try to go out there and kind of salvage this season to make it look like they're trying to win the East? Or because of what happened with not just Acuna, but you're talking about Soroka and different guys, does Snit in that front office, or do the Braves kind of get a mulligan year with everything that has happened?
it's just, if we had this conversation not more than like a week and a half ago, I'd say the Braves would try and go all in and try and go for that division. But the loss of Ronald is it's so hard to overcome. His production at the plate, his production in the outfield, his overall joy that he brings to the team each day. I just see a hard time for the Braves coming out of this All-Star break with that kind of loss in their lineup. It really depends on if Freeman and Ozzie can seriously step up, and they're both already playing at a high level, especially Ozzie. If they're really able to take that superstar next level step for the second half, then maybe they can overcome it. But again, it really depends on the next couple of series. As soon as the All-Star break is over, that road trip and those next few games are going to be critical leading up to the trade deadline. So, right now it doesn't look good, but we'll have to really see. Maybe Ozzie coming out decides to go, beast mode because of his all-star appearance, and Freeman continues to hit well, and Charlie Morton and Drew Smyly continue their good work, and Kyle Muller is able to help lengthen that rotation. There's just too many holes, especially like you guys were just saying in the outfield, where it's not the outfield you even signed up for at the first game of the season. So that loss of production is going to be really, really hard. Is it easy to overcome? No, not so ever. But is it impossible? It'd be hard to say no.
That's what I mean. To me, Gaurav, that's the thing that puts the Braves in a really tricky spot, because on the short term, you're only 4 games out. So maybe Freddie Freeman and Ozzie Albies, to me, could carry you a little bit of the ways. But obviously, if they slump, I don't think Guillermo Heredia, Ire Adrianza and company are going to be able to carry you and pick up the slack over the course of 70 games or so.
I wholeheartedly agree with that, which is why if they were to take that step, if they were to go aggressive and get someone like a Gallo, then maybe you can kind of level that production off. He's not going to be Acuna, but he will provide you really, really good line of protection for Freeman and a really big bat. So maybe with that and plus the weak NL East, you can compete. It just really depends on how Anthopoulos views this current team. If they think they can get really good assets for some of their players that they have that they don't foresee as a big part of the future. Again, the end isn't necessarily there, but these next few series are going to be extremely critical. And if Freeman and Ozzie can really take that step up and carry the team and put it on their back, then anything is possible in the NL East.
What's the Braves' current situation at catcher? And we've heard about Shea Langoliers for a long time. I mean, is that a name that's a couple of years off still?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say he's probably about a year or two off. Just getting his first full season in Mississippi. Alex Jackson actually just came back from injury and has looked really, really good behind the plate. Contreras has had a couple of games down in AAA and starting to get things together. I think you'd have to see really incredible production by Shea to overpass those two, because you really want Shea to have a full season in AA and then a full season hopefully in AAA before he moves up. So I think his production has been there this year, but you could see there's still a few holes in his game. But who knows, by 2023, 2024, you might see Shea really try to force the hand and take that next step and end up on the major league team.
And I know it's all about the current season without, doing your best without trying to look forward. But, 2022, Soroka's back, Ronald Acuna Jr.'s back. You got the trade deadline coming up. How much in the last 3 years has this Braves team elevated the reputation to where crafty veterans who probably didn't want to play in Atlanta are finding a way to not take team-friendly deals, but really want to play with guys like Ronald Acuna Jr. and Freddie Freeman?
I'm sorry, can you say that last part again real quick?
I was saying, how has the last 3 years really boosted the reputation to where veterans who probably didn't want to play in Atlanta kind of want to try to find a way to play with Freddie Freeman and Ronald Acuna Jr.?
No, absolutely. They've done an incredible job of accumulating these really, really young players that haven't even entered their prime yet, right? And of course, Freeman's there right now, but the base level of expectations is so high in Atlanta, and to really you have to applaud the team for being able to do this. They have Acuna under team control for such a long time. They have the likes of Ozzie Albies, who's your all-star second baseman, still under control for quite some time. The core of the team is definitely still young enough and cheap enough where you can turn around and compete automatically in 2022 if you have a great free agency. The free agents available are huge. It's a monster class. And so while 2021 might be a down year, they could totally can turn around and compete next year.
Again, we're talking with Gaurav Vidoc, Talking Shop. And finally, Gaurav, we just came off of the MLB draft, and the Braves obviously do a lot with the pitching, but it seems like maybe a little bit of a different approach where you're getting guys with high velocity. I think they drafted 3 guys that are 6'6" or taller. Speak to kind of what the Braves did in the draft and how we could see maybe the prospect list change in the coming years based off kind of their philosophy here.
Absolutely, and you hit the nail on the head there. They really value really big pitchers. Ryan Cusick, the first round pick out of Wake Forest, while he's not quite polished enough, he's got 2 outstanding pitches. He pumps the velocity, easy 98, 97 plus. Dylan Dodd, their third year, is a senior sign out of Southeast Missouri State, and he also has that high velocity. It's pretty evident that these guys are looking for low walk, high velocity players, especially from the pitching side. And then the bat side, they had some very, very intriguing picks. Like Justin Henry Malloy from Georgia Tech, they're keeping him here as a very intriguing third base prospect. One name to really, really watch and monitor is Tyler Collins from McKinney Boyd High School. Super, super young, 18 years old, very, very toolsy. But if everything rolls out and clicks, Dana Brown from the Braves himself gave that comp of Kenny Lofton. And anytime you give a Hall of Fame comp to a player that's 18 years old, you got to get your eyes on him. So they really had a very interesting draft. I didn't really come close even coming to picking really most of the draft picks. But the more you learn about these guys, you can tell they value size, they value athletes, and they really went heavy on two-way players that play both that can pitch and on the field. That's really highlighted by their second-round pick, Spencer Schwellenbach from Nebraska, who played shortstop and is a pitcher, and the Braves drafted him as a pitcher. He throws 99 really easily. They believe because of his athleticism in the field that he can turn around and learn a third pitch, pretty quickly. So it's a completely different type of frame of mind for this front office. But so far, the past 2 years have been absolutely fantastic. So I look forward to really watching this draft class develop and seeing how they sign and really seeing what they have to offer.
Gaurav Vidoc, Talking Shop, our guest here on 3 and Out. Gaurav, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me on once again, guys.
Appreciate it. Gaurav Vidoc, Talking Shop, talking Braves, talking trade deadline, talking that draft class as well. Gut feeling, BJ and Ben. What do you think Alex Anthopoulos is thinking about right now before we get to the trade deadline?
I think manageable acquisitions, maybe getting a bullpen piece, maybe getting a bat, but I would be surprised if Atlanta and Anthopoulos give up the, prospects that are needed to get the home run pick, whether it's Gallo or one of the other, big names. I think you will see Atlanta make a move to address the bullpen and to get a bat, but I'm not sure it'll be the superstar name that a lot of people are thinking.
Yeah, I think it's going to be perception-driven more than reality-driven. Alex Anthopoulos is going to go out there and make a move to make it look like this, so that they're still trying to fight and salvage the rest of this season. But like I said earlier, Ronald Acuna Jr. being out, Kevin, that ain't nobody going to really be going crazy no matter what the Braves do. They're just going to be counting down the months to when Ronald Acuna Jr. comes back. But he's going to try to go out there and fight because Alex Anthopoulos, all he knows thus far in his tenure is winning the National League East. That's going to be very, very hard to do in 2021.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out on this Wednesday, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here, 3 and Out on this Wednesday. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Baseball All-Star game is over. Getting ready for the second half. Braves will be back on Friday against Tampa Bay and the Rays, but we have game 4 of the NBA Finals tonight. I'm assuming since it's National Mac and Cheese Day and all this talk about it has got you hungry, you're going to be settling down. Game 4, mac and cheese. I would say in hand, but in bowl, ready to go.
As long as it doesn't have breadcrumbs or vegetables on top of it. Yeah, Kevin. Yes, I want the mac and I want the cheese. That's what I want on my mac and cheese. No breadcrumbs.
Yes, I want my mac and cheese to look like mac and cheese, not peach cobbler. Peach cobbler can have breadcrumbs on the top of it. It can. Peach cobbler can have a little breadcrumbs on the top. It's fine. I'm just saying, not my mac and cheese.
But I don't get it. This is not a baked potato. Like, you don't put chives and sour cream and bacon bits. It's not a baked potato. It's mac and cheese. What are we doing?
Kevin knows somebody who adds a little something to their mac and cheese, and Kevin told him it was good when he ate it, and he know they're listening. So to that person, it's fine, but no, it's not fine.
I mean, I don't want like 4 inches on the top, but if you get a little crumble on the top, I'm fine. Okay.
Listen to me, people. Don't let Kevin get y'all beat up, man, at the family.
I'm not saying that's the way I would make it, but if it's on there, I'm not going to turn it down. It's fine. It's not the most egregious, heinous thing that's ever been created in the history of the world.
So what you think is heinous? What, double fudge? Triple fudge?
Yeah, that's just making stuff up.
I mean, how do you get to this point? Man, this macaroni and cheese is okay. Yeah, what's it missing? I don't know. Breadcrumbs. That would make it a lot better. You know what it needs? More cheese. More cheese.
No, I mean, yeah, you're like, oh, it needs some like vegetables. No, it needs you to stop making it. That's not macaroni and cheese should be left alone. Like BJ say, macaroni, cheese, a lot of cheese, even more cheese, put it in the oven, and let that ooey dooey goodness just take you to another place. And you good.
Breadcrumbs.
Kevin, let me tell you, listen.
Again, I'm not saying it has to be on there. I'm just saying it's not like doesn't make it disgusting and you can't even look at it.
If you're at a table and somebody's got mac and cheese and they take out something and they like current brick and they put it on the top.
No, you don't do that. You would kind of bake it on the top for a half a second.
And let me tell you why you don't do that. If you don't bake it on the top, you don't add it on the top on the table. You don't do that. Leave it alone. Kevin, would you put ketchup on a steak? Exactly. That's why you don't put breadcrumbs on mac and cheese. Leave it alone.
That's like apples and oranges. That's not even the same argument at the end of the day. We'll come back. We'll continue this later. It's 3 and Out. We got to go. We have game 4 tonight. Bucks and the Suns. We'll continue this Thursday on the show all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio.